I'm okay, sure.
Right. Right, I call this house to order. Welcome, congratulations to both teams for making it to the quarters. Woo! And on the motion, without further ado, I invite the Prime Minister to start this debate. Here, here.
In status quo, women are underrepresented in the workforce and are stereotyped as inferior, as a lesser being. Even though you may argue that there are women who work at the top level managerial, but in the lower levels, discrimination still exists. It is a real problem. This is why side government strongly supports the motion the House would only give out microcredit loans to startup or companies that have a substantial representation of women in their workforce. Our stance on this is to empower women in workforces and in society in general, while also giving a good head start, especially to startups. We characterize microcredit loans as loans in small amounts given to startups so that they can start their business with minimal financial burden. Also, startup means companies that are on the grassroots levels that needs funding to run their business because they have just started this business. Our end goal on this motion is women would get better representation in workforce.
Yeah.
Our policy on this is that startups or companies will only get microcredit loans if there are 50% or more women in their workforce. Now, it is reasonable to do this because women are already at a huge disadvantage in the general workforce. So by imposing a quota, it will not harm anyone. So I begin this, I will state my two arguments here. The first one would be changing societal perception that women are less capable. No, thank you. And the secondly, acts as an incentive for startups and companies. The first one, changing societal perception that women are less capable. By imposing this 50% quota, we provide an avenue for women to truly shine and show their potential in the workforce. Because currently, people think that only men can lead these companies to become great and leaving women behind. If later side opposition comes up and says, this will further hurt the situation because it sends out a message that women are underrepresented and are weaker, we say it is okay because women are already at a disadvantage. So by giving them this advantage, it is fair. We will also mitigate the stereotype of women would be treated equally. It is okay if in this situation, if some side will think that men will be discriminated because, like I said just now, women are already at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
Secondly, acts as an incentive to startups or companies. Now remember, startups and companies are profit incentivized organizations. They exist solely for the reason to make money, and in order to make money, they need the funding. So this quota will act as an incentive for them to gain funding to further grow their business. It will benefit both sides because women will get better representation in the workforce and are viewed equally, and also the startups and companies will gain the money that they need. This is very important because then the employers would respect women more, because he will realize that women are needed in this workforce. Because before this, they are not required to do so, and they can treat women as lesser beings. And with that, I've never been prouder to propose.
Thank the Prime Minister. I invite Leader of Opposition. Here, here.
Gender equality can be best achieved under our OP paradigm. Imposing a circumventory measure would limit the availability of credit necessary to the people who need it most. Is it principally justified to make such a measure contingent on gender policy? Let's have some characterization. Microcredit loans are loans within the amount of 10 to 50,000 USD, given to poor people to enable them to start up their own business, and hence these people would be provided with an avenue for livelihood. Let's move on to some stakeholders. First of all, we have women who usually further their studies or other similar pursuits. These women would not be inclined to skill-based jobs as are common in startups or such companies, but they would be more inclined to professional jobs. There are also women who do not further their studies or are from disadvantaged backgrounds as compared to the former. And there are also the poor people who do require such aid. In our mechanism, we would like to tell you that companies who have sufficiently high profit margins, like big companies, are the ones who should have substantial proportions of women in their workforce. This is because they would send a larger message to society. If they have more women in their workforce, it would send a greater message saying that gender equality must be respected in the workplace. This is because if you read about small companies employing a significant proportion of women, the possible bearing it will have on you is, what's this? Never heard of it before. But if a big company like Google does it, you'll be like, oh, okay, that's something. Moving on, we tell you that this should not be the initial prerequisite for the startup loan, but further loans can be made contingent on this, because once such a small business initiated by people who are impoverished, who really need the money, come into place, then only can further loans be contingent on proportion of women. Because At first, they are still small, and naturally, they would require further loans to make their businesses take off further. So we tell you that this is going to be effective. The Prime Minister said that discrimination exists in lower levels. Yes, it does. But we tell you that we will not disadvantage poor people when we want to give them startup loans. Because it is not the burden of the poor people to deal with such discrimination. It is the burden of the government, it is the burden of society. And a quota would only prove disadvantageous to these poor people in that they would be forced to find women, for example, if their job specification is one which women would not be inclined to apply for, they would still be forced by this societal implication to pursue such alternatives. The government also said something about how they would mitigate stereotypes and how they would change the social perception that women are less capable. However, we tell you that this is counterproductive, and this will be elaborated more on my point later. But first of all, we tell you that these microcredit loans are just for the poor. You need to be poor to receive a microcredit loan. Moving on to our substantive, which is how the implementation of the motion would necessitate the propagation of a negative general narrative in society in that women do require help. Implementing the motion would only serve to propagate the notion that women are in need of institutional mechanisms to defend their representation in the workforce. The implementation of the motion is counterproductive to the achievement of gender equality because of the narrative it propagates. We tell you that in this, organic change is lasting change. We tell you that although discrimination does exist, they have to acknowledge that discrimination is contingent on a lot of other factors, and that it doesn't exist in all situations. It doesn't even exist in most situations. We even don't know how much discrimination there is. We tell you that organic change is lasting change. On the next level, we would like to substantiate this further by telling you that the motion will fall in its objective to propagate gender equality because it is not principally justified. Under status quo, for the poor to whom microcredit loans are given, it does not matter who they employ to them, because their main focus is to make money to further their livelihoods. That is their primary goal because they are impoverished and they do need the money. It is neither principally nor practically justified because the imposition of such a prerequisite denies the opportunity for people who need it most to require it if the circumstances for the employment of a significant proportion of women do not arise. They will also fail at inculcating a potent narrative in the psyche of society, because it is certainly much better for other bigger companies to implement this as they have more significant bearing on the social impression of gender equality requirements. Let me draw an analogy here. Hussein once said that you should catch the big fish in corruption than the small fish. We must deal with the big fish and not the small fish. Thank you.
And Leader of Opposition, I invite Deputy Prime Minister.
Ladies and gentlemen, from what has side opposition said so far is that the definition of microcredit loans, first. Secondly, they talked about how they wanted an organic change. Thirdly, they talked about how it is more important that women are not represented in this stuff. Women, it's okay to leave these poor women behind under their definition because they need the incentive to start up first. Ladies and gentlemen, let me first prove to you why it is first important under their paradigm that we give this poor woman a chance to actually compete and get involved with this kind of startup companies. Firstly, because we all can agree that the world today, women are underrepresented in skill force jobs. Even if
they are, even if they are women who are interested in the skill force job, they are less likely to be hired. The only reason why is because stereotype, and also because they are seen less capable compared to men. Secondly, they wanted an organic change. But let me ask you why. Since the time when women went down to riot to have a change, there still haven't been a significant amount of women in the workforce. We still see women not getting the same amount of pay as men do in the workforce. We still see women are underrepresented in the editorial board, and these are the reasons why certain governments implement policies such as quota in the editorial board and also in high rank posts. Now, moving on to my positive points, which is first, the state, as they mentioned, has a duty in removing this discrimination, and that is why we as side government are doing so, because the state essentially has a duty to empower women. Secondly, when we demand companies and startups to have a substantial amount of women in their workforce, this gives a bargaining chip for the women in the workforce itself. Firstly, how can the state exercise its duty in empowering women? Hence, since women are underappreciated in societal misconception and they are not less likely to be high in the skill force job according to their paradigm, we say it is a must then that we implement a quota substantial for women so they can participate. And we have to remember that companies are profit incentivized. If they can make more money, if they can make more money by introducing women into their workforce, hence they will do so. Rationally, if a woman has a qualification and if you hire her, you can get funding. Hence, that's what companies would do, since they now have an incentive to not only to hire women but a win-win situation where also they get a loan. Secondly, the government needs diversity in workforce and better productivity among the workforce itself. They need to empower women on ground root level. They need women, even if women take on a low job force, we still say it's better, because having a job is much more better than not having a job at all. Secondly, the bargaining chip for women. What happens when we have a substantial amount of women in the workforce of the company? Company has an obligation to listen to their demands, and companies must now keep their women workforce happy. Hence implementing better maternal benefits to create a better environment where the woman workforce can work more productively. We say this is good for women, and even if they say that this is discriminatory for men, we say it's good, because for far too long have women been underappreciated in society today. For far too long have we given the stereotype preconception to men. We do not mind discriminating men for betterment of the woman who down there, who needs the job, who needs to empower themselves through policies such as this. Hence, and since I stated earlier of how corporates are profit incentivized, they now also have a larger voice to listen to in their workforce itself, which is a woman workforce. If they have a 50% of women in their workforce, they now not only need to cater for men in the workforce, but also for the women. Before this, women are substantially less, and they're ignored, and their voice is ignored, and they do not demand for better pay because they know that they can lose any their job, and discriminating a certain group of people. We see it's still good, because we need and empower to make women into today's world. We need people all with qualifications, and we need to show that, and hence go inside government if you want a better world for women in.
Thank Deputy Prime Minister. Invite Deputy Leader of Opposition. You're here.
We, the opposition, are not here just to fight for the freedom of, to fight for gender equality, but to fight for the impoverished too. We, our opposition, standing here today to make sure that gender equality is achieved while the impoverished are being benefited. The government came up and said about in the workforce, said about poor women to the startup companies, they should be empowered in startup companies so that the poor women be empowered. But we are saying that startup companies should not be responsible. Although the government wants to empower this particular policy, they should do it when startup companies are stable enough. Startup companies are not stable. They need to improve step by step, where if you open a business, you won't be getting enough money to even cater yourself. So you need to where we improve, and then they put this policy on them when they need more loans. Where our workforce cater or ignored. They talked about workforce ignoring the payment of women are not being there, and women are not being as equally as that. In status quo nowadays, most of us are fighting for equal payment for women, but improvising. No, thank you. But putting the burden on the impoverished, where those are the ones who are getting the microcredit loan, are not a good idea. I'll talk about it in my substantive. Moving to my microcredit loan. How is microcredit loan needed without any restriction? How does microcredit loan without restriction at the same time without restriction will improve life of an impoverished guy? Why is it important for the both women? No, thank you. Why is it important for both the women and the impoverished to be to be improved together? Okay, moving on. Let's look at our world today. There are people who are impoverished who are needing the microcredit loan, and the women who are being stated for no, thank you. Stated for being unequal in the society nowadays. Okay, poor. Let's look at them. How they are carrying their life. They are carrying their life based on what they get on particular basis. Now you're giving them a sum of amount of money like 50,000 to them to start up a business which is based on skills. Now what is happening now is even they mentioned the status quo discriminating women. If the poor himself, if the whole society is discriminating women, how does the poor understand how not to discriminate women and to hire women? Even so, if you're forcing this, what will happen to that particular poor guy who's want to hiring to getting a microcredit loan will become more harder. Where the society in a status quo saying no, thank you. Status quo saying that women are being discriminated. Now his mindset will be no, I'm not going to hire women, but I'm going to hire men so that I can improve my society. Although it doesn't matter whether he hires a woman or not, because the main point for him is to get his business done and better with. Moving on. What will their mechanism will do is, secondly, will do is giving up. The impoverished family will give up on getting microcredit loans. Why is it so? No, thank you. No, thank you. Why is it so? Because now you are implementing this law saying that women should be the ones who need you need to have a workforce in women of women so that you can start up your company. So it is known that in status quo that it is very hard to get women into your workforce. Now they have a lot of burden to get 15% of women in their workforce so that they can get this microcredit loan. It is another level of burden for them to get this microcredit loan, which will change their life. Okay, now let's move on. Why is it so important that both of the sides must be represented, that women and the impoverished? How would government will do in our side? Okay, now no one knows and cares what is happening to the women, where they're not aware of what are the gender equality happening. If big companies like Apple, Microsoft, or Google hire 50% of your substantial amount of at least 15% of women, it will be taught all around the society. This will change the mindset of those who are living lower levels, and in the future, maybe they can hire them. So this will not contradict, where we give them time to improve their startup companies to become in a stable level, where after that, the government comes in and implementing this policy where your workforce, there must be a 15% of women, so that I can give you more loans. So this is how our policy wins, where we care about the impoverished, where they are in the need of improving, where they need the microcredit loan to improve their business. And we are also saying that to big companies giving awareness to the loan. So this shows that we just not fight for women gender equality. We are also fighting for the poor who need the microcredit loans. Thank you.
Thank the GLO. Invite Government Whip.
Side opposition refused to take my POI when I stood up for multiple times just now. So now let me pose the question for the opposition whip to answer. Prove to me why would even the impoverished have the incentive to start companies, to establish startups. I tell you that they have no confidence in starting a company simply because also they are poor. You are painting the picture as if the poor have enough confidence to start a company, but that isn't the case. But let's say even if that they can start the company, women who are capable of being hired are still not hired simply because that the societal perception that they are less equal to men. So you come up here for 10 minutes and telling us that you want to fight for gender equality when you don't even want to hire women, and when you don't even think that women's representation is important in these small companies. Small things, the small things make big changes. So you fail to recognize on that point. Two clashes that I will give you today. Number one, which side mitigates stereotypes more? Number two, which side provides a win-win situation? First clash. The leader of opposition came up here and told you about organic change happening under their side. Let me tell you why this isn't the case and why organic change will happen better under our side. Under our side, women are often discriminated. So having a substantial representation of women in the workforce will provide the avenue to organic change, because now these people cannot when there are 50% of women in the workforce, this organic change can only happen when you are depriving that, then your narrative is that women your narrative is that women should only be in big companies to show that gender equality is that there is gender equality. No, that's not the case. Have a seat. So my first speaker, my Prime Minister, has stated the under status quo. Women are constantly only under our policy. They will only be successfully represent women in the workforce. When you yourselves are depriving them and saying that it is not essential to hire them in small workforces, because you think that only if they are hired in large companies, that only that shows gender equality. But
sorry to the fact that doesn't show gender equality. Have a seat. So now, following on to my second clash, which side provides a win-win situation? The funny thing is that when you keep constantly saying that the microcredits are given to the poor, and it is not logic that it is illogical that the impoverished want to start up a company simply because they have no confidence. So why do our side provide a win-win situation? It's because that under our side, this microcredit loan will act as an incentive, also to act as empowering the woman, empowering the importance of women in the workforce. Small things will lead into bigger change. So it is not about the big companies. When you come up here and tell me about Google, I think it's completely irrelevant to the case that is at hand now. So my first and second speaker has constantly come up here and told you that that our side provides the our side are the ones that provide the mitigation factor. The problem in status quo itself is the problem that gender equality cannot be achieved. When you come up here and tell us that women only gender equality can only be achieved if women proceed to higher workforces, gender equality actually isn't achieved under your case, because you have failed to recognize that even women who are deprived from the privilege to smoke, and you say that is gender equality. No, actually you are the ones that are perpetuating gender inequality under your case. No POIs taken, and I wish that before I end my speech, I wish that the government opposition whip will answer this question again. Why would the impoverished even have the incentive to start companies when they are poor, when they have no confidence, and even when the women, and even when they wanted women in larger forces and larger companies, but the problem itself is that women aren't even hired in these small companies for you to talk about gender equality. So therefore, thank you very much.
Thank Government Whip and Red Opposition Whip.
I think that the government side has got a bit of confusion on what our mechanism is. To say it again in simpler terms, our mechanism is to provide startup loans or microcredits to the poor, not taking into account the gender of the workforce, because the poor need it. Later on, they may ask for more loans if they have a significant amount of women in the workforce. This is guaranteed to happen because they are micro companies and they need it. Now, on to some. Many times you have said that we, the opposition, leave women behind. That is not true. Just because poor startups need to develop financially first doesn't mean that they reject women. It means that we just employ that they just employ who need money for it first. Later on, they will employ women when they need more loans. No, thank you, sit down. And also you said that our side didn't accept any POIs, but neither did you. Okay, so please.
Here.
You also said implementation of the motion gives women greater leverage. And you said quota is necessary. Well, the goal of the startup is to help the poor
who do qualify for microcredits, and these people are poor, would you disadvantage the poor even further by implementing a motion which okay, wait, hold on. You would implement this motion which would further disadvantage the poor people who are trying to start up the company. You also mentioned that they have no initiative to continue on the company or start it up. Well, let me just tell you about this one bank called Grameen Bank, which is a well-known bank in Bangladesh, which has been known to give out many microcredit loans to those poor companies who want to start up. It has also received a Nobel Prize for this, just so you know. Okay, so organic change. Wait, hold on. Organic change is better under government paradigm because government paradigm is called structural change. And this is bad because people who are not motivated to do it but forced should let them become aware first, and then they can make their choices. This can be done in bigger companies. Now I'm going to ask you two questions. Does this motion promote gender equality? No. And I may refer back to my first speaker who said, this is only in small businesses. It doesn't affect the situation we are currently in, where women, as you say, are disadvantaged and not appreciated. But on the other hand, if they were to be employed in big companies as a CEO or a vice president or whatever, it would be a really interesting case and it would catch the eye of many. And how is our mechanism better than the one proposed by the government? Well, for ours, we don't require a high percentage of women in the workforce to receive the microcredit loans, as I've said before, which is essential for them to start their business. And then when the business has stabilized, then they can request for another loan if they have a significant amount of women in their workforce. And with that, I have clearly shown you why the benefits provided by our proposed mechanism heavily outweighs the proposal for the motion. Thank you. Can I get
You read it? Did you see my student card? Couldn't find my student card.
Thank Opposition Whip. I invite Opposition reply. Here.
Well, what have we achieved for today's debate? Let's talk about the government side. They came out and talked about empowering the women's gender, who are not being initiative to open a startup business because they are lacking. And what else they say? These women are not being implemented. Their mechanism will work well, but we have proved to you that our mechanism will work well in all the situations. And both the poor, which the microcredit loans, which is being provided, the current status go where the Grameen Bank, which is very famous, the microcredit loan is being given to the poor. And and it is very obvious that the microcredit loans are helping the poor. So we have achieved the importance where these startup companies should not, in our mechanism, saying that these startup companies should not be credited to more burden where they are to hire more women so that then only they can get a microcredit loan. We have stated that the government will implement this policy where they need more money after they being stable, after opening up their businesses, which shows that the responsibility of the government to acquire gender equality at the same time for the government to implement to improve the lives of impoverished. And we also talked about propagate narrative which further discriminate women, not principally justified because the poor need the money for them to improve their lifestyles. Besides education, microcredit loan is the best way to do it. Not practically justified is because not much effect in the society, as I explained in my speech just now. Imagine yourself as the impoverished. Being in an impoverished country, you have nothing to do but to depend on the microcredit loan where you are adult but you can't get enough education. Now you have a hope that microcredit loan will be an incentive for you to start up to improve your life. But now the government comes up and says, no, you can't have the microcredit loan. I won't be giving you this microcredit loan unless you have enough of women in the workforce, where the status quo is saying that women are being discriminated in the lower level. And here we come, where the big companies, Google and Apple, being creating awareness where all are equal, where we can hire women in the workforce. There is no problem in hiring women in the workforce. So now this will reach to those in the below, where when this poor impoverished guy starts his company and becomes stable, and when the government implements this law, now he understands that it is important for me to hire a woman, where big companies like Google hiring women, and they are doing well. Thank you.
Thank the opposition reply. And to end this debate, government reply.
Is it 3 minutes or 4?
3.
Ladies and gentlemen, mind you this, big companies are completely irrelevant to this motion today. This motion is talking about microcredit loans to startups or companies. Big companies, as a matter of fact, do not take microcredit loans. And this motion implies on companies, small companies like this. And one assumption they have made, which is very bad, is as if when you start up companies, you can't find women who are skilled enough for you to work, for women who are skilled enough to join the workforce in your company. That's the assumption that they've been making when starting the debate. And they talk about organic change, but they haven't really proved of why organic change in a long period of time, which takes consume time, is better than our policies, which gives an direct avenue for these startup companies to actually hire women into the workforce. We are not going to wait any longer for women to actually be given the platform for them to show their capability is. And they talk about how gender equality is obtained under their paradigm. But how is it even obtained when you don't even hire women into their workforce? The problem today, as my Prime Minister stated, is that people are less likely to hire women, irrelevant of if you are a small company or startup company. They're less likely to hire you because for the social stereotype that you are less capable than the man. This is what we've been trying to prove, that gender equality does not exist at all under their paradigm. And also they also talked about how the idea of it's better if the startup companies do not hire women first, but when they progress ask for bigger loans, then when we should imply these policies. We see why should you even wait for a longer period of time? Why should you even wait for a longer period of time for this policy to be implemented? Why don't we do it now itself? Hence, this comes to my This comes to me summarizing what side government has said so far today. Side government has challenged the idea in both startup companies. Why is there a necessity of this policy introduced in both startup companies and normal companies, which they have not touched the idea at all. The idea of how women can have a better bargaining power in companies and this policy implemented. The idea of how the avenue and platform is provided for women, and the idea of how there are women who are skillful enough, but they have not challenged the idea yet. They come to a consensus that they do not have women, and it will be hard finding for people to work for them. Hence, to summarize what the side government has said today is, firstly, the problem that we have in today's world, under-appreciation of women in the workforce. Secondly, is that by implementing this policy, we can create a better working environment for women, and we can include more women inside the workforce. Hence, ladies and gentlemen, if you want a better world for women in their workforce, you want more women to able to be productive back to society, go with side government.